Yeah, welcome to a special bonus edition of Beyond the Arc After Dark. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Reiter. And the Cavs Oklahoma City rematch, Bill, not quite as
Oof.
good as that first game.
No.
Oklahoma City ends up winning it by 20. Bill, that didn't do the score justice. They were up by 42 at one point. They absolutely blew the doors off of Cleveland. If they really wanted to keep their foot on the gas pedal, who knows how many points that they could have put up. Really good game for Oklahoma City. One of those games that if you're the Cavs, you just want to forget it.
The Thunder just did to the Cavs what John Morant did the other night to Wemby, only this one is official and counts.
Yeah.
It was, look, I guess I'll overreact a little, but we're not going to overreact. Yeah, Cleveland's still a really good basketball team, but that's embarrassing. Nationally televised game. It's this matchup part 2 in a short span of time. They were awful, John. They were awful.
Yeah, they were from start to finish. You and I were just on HQ dressed exactly alike, wearing black t-shirts and gray sports coats. And we were talking about, there's your sport coat. We both took ours off. But I was saying, like, it was a bad night for Donovan Mitchell for the second straight game. And it's kind of very Oklahoma City to do that, right? They have a theory of the case when they play big stars. We saw it last year when they played against the Mavericks in the playoffs, when they took away or at least slowed down Luka and Kyrie, right? Now, the difference was in those games, in that series, PJ Washington had the series of his life, sat in the corner and just canned threes. Tonight wasn't the same thing for the Cavs, right? They take away Donovan Mitchell in multiple games. And it's like, what do you do when we talk about how good the Oklahoma City Thunder defense is? If you're Donovan Mitchell for 2 straight games, right? You start Lou Dort on you. Okay, when Lou Dort is done, here comes Jalen Williams. Okay, when Jalen Williams is done, here comes the other Jalen Williams. Oh, when Jalen Williams, the second one, is done, here comes Kendrick Williams. Everybody on the team is evidently named Williams. Oh, and when he's done, you can also throw Alex Caruso at him. I mean, like, when you have 5 or 6 guys who are lockdown defenders who have a very good shot to give your best player a bad night, that is awfully difficult to overcome.
It's what makes it such a compelling matchup. And by the way, if you were to take some of the things we're going to say now and compare them to when these guys played each other, what feels like 30 seconds ago, last week.
Last week.
There's going to be a juxtaposition. It's a one-off, but it's the best offense in the NBA against the best defense in the NBA. And today the best defense won. This is the best shooting team, the Cavs, by percentages in the NBA. They were atrocious. And I know you talked about this on HQ, and it really jumped out to me. This Cleveland team does an amazing job normally protecting the basketball, not turning the ball over. But the Thunder force more turnovers than anybody in the NBA. And part of the reason, you gave a great stat that I'm not going to steal from you. I'm going to let you give it. But there's a stat that you gave on CBS Sports HQ that blew my mind that I'll let you do now. That it reinforced, like, you talked about the depth and how they can switch almost everybody. And by the way, Chet Holmgren, not even playing right now. He's the best defensive player on the team and one of the best in the game. Yeah. It just speaks to the fact that as good as Kenny Atkinson has fine-tuned this Cavs offense, when the Thunder are doing things the right way, they can flummox Donovan Mitchell. That's critical. They can turn over even the Cavs, who don't usually turn the ball over, and get points from that. So they get easy buckets, and they get this momentum. That's critical. And maybe most impressively, they made the Cavs into a team that could not shoot tonight. And don't talk about the fourth quarter and the garbage time run by Cleveland. Right? I mean, it was over, at least in this round 2. The Thunder's defense was so good, the best offense in the NBA had literally no shot.
Yeah, season high 21 turnovers for the Cavs tonight. And that's really playing right into Oklahoma City's hands, because they love to create havoc defensively and turn you over. And by turning you over, they turn that into offense. They love to get out and run and create offense off of defense. Those 21 turnovers by the Cavs tonight led to 30 points for Oklahoma City, which is really difficult to overcome. I think the stat you're talking about is the gap for...
I love this.
Okay, so I was looking at this and I'm like, man, they're a really ridiculous defense, but like, how good are they, right? Because we've talked a lot about how they've been one of the best defenses of all time. This season, the gap between the number 1 Oklahoma City Thunder, their defensive rating, and number 2 Orlando, who you and I, when we talk about Orlando, we praise their defense because their defense is awesome. I do. But the gap between the number 1 defensive rating and the number 2 defensive rating is the same distance, the same gap as the defensive rating for Orlando at number 2 and number 10 Golden State. That's how much farther ahead Oklahoma City is than everybody else in the league, including an Orlando Magic team that has been incredible defensively this season. So again, I'm not sure what you do with a Thunder team where you look at them and they have so many different switchable pieces. And tonight, I thought the big problem for them was going to be, what do they do with the front court against the Cavs? Because the Cavs have one of the best front courts in the NBA.
Yep.
You've got Evan Mobley, who should be an all-star this year, could get all NBA consideration, and Jared Allen, who's just like so solid and so underrated. And they have figured out how to play together this season. And then on the other side, you had neither Chet nor Isaiah, and I thought it was going to be a huge problem for them. And it wasn't even for a moment, Bill.
Yeah, what you do is you create so many points off turnovers that stat is better offensively than any player that played for the Cavs, and you shoot the lights out. They hit, 45 or 46% of the threes, and were they in the 60s at the end? I know, Lou Dort
just draining threes.
The Lou Dort game. By the way, I'm going to overreact a little bit. I'm going to do it's not Tuesday, but another takeaway from this game, because I don't want to lose. I know we have people from Cleveland Cavs fans watching. They did just beat this team a week ago, right? So the other takeaway is the strong difference, especially for Cleveland, because it was a really good close game last week at home versus away. Only a game separates these two teams in terms of their record. And if presumably they can meet each other in the finals, and they can, having home court advantage might be really, really significant, because Cleveland wilted in Oklahoma City, and they obviously stood tough and tall when they played these guys in Cleveland. So just bookmark that for down the road. The rest of the way, and the ability to kind of carry this on as you get closer to 70 wins. These teams are on track for that as you sort of close in on this idea. And I want to hit this in a second on being the best team in the NBA, or the team that's the team of the moment. It can be harder to keep your habits that kind of get you there. Those things can be huge, because whoever has home court advantage, if they play each other in the finals, John, based on this sample size of 2 games, that might be a really, really big deal.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And you know what? Like, despite the fact that this was not a good game for the Cavs, the whole home court and teams on the road thing, you're looking at the 2 best teams at home in the NBA, and you're looking at the 2 best road teams in the NBA. They're so even. The styles make fights, right? You have the best offense against the best defense. And then conversely, Oklahoma City prior to this game was up to 6th in offense, and the Cavs are 8th in defense. They might slide a little bit because of this effort tonight, but still, like, they're so evenly matched in every possible metric that, if it is a preview of the finals, one game here wasn't a great effort for them, but I really think it would be an absolute barn burner between these two. They're also so deep.
Amazing.
We were talking about this on HQ tonight. We were asked the question, well, what do we think these two teams are going to do at the deadline? And both of us were like, probably nothing. They don't really do anything. Yeah.
Can I, all right. So I'm going to give you a sort of a thing I've been thinking about as it relates to the Cavs. I don't want you to tell me you think it's reasonable or legit. And it may not be, because I'm writing a column for tomorrow on Pat Riley, and I've been reading his book from the Showtime, How We Won, where he talks about the disease of Moore. So I've been obsessing over the disease of Moore and reading old interviews with Riley and going through old notes that I had when I covered the Heat. And I've been thinking about Cleveland from a week ago, and how Cleveland obviously won that Thunder game. I proclaimed them the best team in the NBA. And I think there was from the casual fan, there was this sort of new focus on Cleveland. And since that moment, now it's only 4 games, and one of my favorite quotes of all time is Mark Twain: there's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics. So I'm about to go past lies, damn lies to stats. But since they beat the Thunder, and since they sort of had, I think, this sort of enhanced perspective, maybe internally and certainly externally, being the best team in the NBA, they were the best offense in the game heading into that first Thunder game a week ago, and they were the 10th best defense. Depends where you look, but 1 in 10 at NBA's stats page. It's 3 games heading into today's game. 11th in offense, 24th in defense. And it's not as if they played the Knicks and the Celtics. They played the Raptors and the Pacers twice. And it reinforces for me, I think there's a human nature reality. When you get to a certain level of expected greatness, it is harder to maintain that. And this is a Cleveland team that's never won without LeBron James. Donovan Mitchell's amazing, but he's been bad in both games. And there are, I think, reasonable questions about how reliable he is in the playoffs. I tend to believe in him, but there are people who don't. I just think it's probably too small of a sample size to take anything away from, but they haven't played very well, John, even if they were 2-1 entering this game, since they had the biggest win of their non-LeBron James history.
Yeah, a little bit of the air came out of the balloon after that. The Raptors win was, they white-knuckled that, and then the Pacers loss wasn't great. But again, they do still have the best record, game up on Oklahoma City. They've been good all season long. They're 11-1 versus the Western Conference. And then Oklahoma City is 15-1 against the Eastern Conference. Their only loss to the other conference for both teams is against each other. I think like I've seen enough, especially with Bill, the Celtics. Meanwhile, while all this is happening, while we're talking about, like, we're sort of nitpicking a little bit on the Cavs, or looking at Oklahoma City and go, who in the Western Conference could possibly compete with them? While all of this is happening, the Celtics are in a horrendous shooting slump. And they're like talking about it, and none of them are shooting it well. Jaylen Brown and Derek White, who I love, has just like can't figure it out. And Drew Holiday all season long has been weird offensively. And Jason Tatum has been good, but just like all of a sudden their top 6 guys like can't figure it out. I think like these two teams, their biggest competition is each other right now. I don't think it's particularly close anywhere else.
You know, Akeem, so we were on CBS Sports HQ before we were doing this, and Akeem Dermish, who you and I both think is awesome, asked us, and we talked about sort of which conference is more, I can't remember if this was off air or on air, which conference is sort of the more difficult path. I know what you're saying about the Celtics. I hear you on their shooting slump. I would still rather be, and I don't know if you agree, I'd rather be in the West, despite the fact there are more. I think if I'm one of these two teams, because there are more landmines, but there's only one actual Goliath that's not Cleveland in the East. I still think Boston is good enough to win a 7-game series against anybody. I think they're going to figure it out. So you're right, but I'd rather be if I'm the Thunder. I don't fear anybody in the West. I worry about some. I don't fear anybody. I think Cleveland should and does fear Boston.
You know what? That's a really interesting way to look at it, because I think the third best team in the NBA, you know, despite the fact that they're defending champs right now, because they are having their struggles, is the Celtics. I think these other two teams are pretty clearly the two best teams right now. And then the Celtics, if they figure it out, then all of a sudden enter that conversation. And you're right. The West has more good teams, but I don't fear any of them as much as I would fear the Celtics if I were the Cavs. In fact, I was looking at, somebody asked me, okay, well, who's the biggest threat to the Thunder in the Western Conference? And I started going down the teams, and I was like, well, no, because, you know, you could go the case with the Rockets. No, because their offense, they can't shoot. Memphis, you know, they turn the ball over a lot and they make questionable, and you just like keep going down, and you get to the end and you're like, it's really OKC.
So there's one team that comes to mind, but they're a shadow of what the Celtics are. It's Denver. Like that is when you were and I don't, again, I'm not.
Is it because of Russ? It's because of Russ, right?
Really, because Westbrook is the best player on earth in his own mind. No, Russ has been good. He's been better this year, not in his own mind.
Let's take a quick break. On the other side, we'll discuss who could potentially challenge Oklahoma City. I want to talk about the newest fan return. I know you hate All-Star voting, but I just want to talk about how many of the Cavs and how many of the Thunder should make this thing. And then also, did SGA really elevate himself in that MVP conversation? I think there's a case to be made for it. So we'll discuss that after a quick timeout. This is Beyond the Arc. All right, welcome back to a special Beyond the Arc After Dark, after Oklahoma City absolutely throttled the Cavs, Bill. Let's do the SGA conversation here. The other day we were going through our MVP convo, and we've got 4 guys solidly in. We talked about who might the 5th guy be. The question was what to do about the MVP, and you actually went with SGA, who is the odds-on favorite right now, depending on which odds maker you prefer. I had reluctantly gone with Joker, and we basically settled on there's no wrong answer here. Man, that was a statement game again. Like, he's starting to make me rethink this thing.
You know what? And he was unbelievable. And there was a comment that obviously, like, I'm losing my memory. Either you made or Akeem or the broadcast, that there's such a young team, which we hadn't, I think, talked about last week. He's not just the best player on a really talented team, but he is the veteran-ish. This is a really young Thunder basketball team. And I think there's like added value in the fact that he is the leader of a team that, you know, it would be okay and understood if, despite how talented they are, it had taken them another year to get to the place that they're at. I mean, they don't feel out of schedule now because of how good they are, but they weren't awesome in the playoffs last year, right? There's still a bunch of young dudes. SGA is the leader of that squad, and I think on top of all the other conversations we've had, for me, it's one game, but it does increase SGA's lead ever so slightly in what's going to be, I think, a mad dash to the finish line between him and Joker. It's a two-person race.
For everybody watching on YouTube right now, you can see a shot chart from tonight's game. He's just so efficient, Bill. There's not a lot of wasted energy. He doesn't take bad shots. He shot, 17 for 26 tonight, so 65% from the floor. As a guard, that's unbelievable. We were discussing the other on a show.
And only had 2 turnovers, by the way. Sorry to interrupt you.
And again, he takes care of the ball. So the other day we were talking about the Memphis Grizzlies and how they end up sometimes shooting themselves in the foot. And if they could just limit their turnovers and make smarter basketball decisions, and that includes the entire team, but in specific, John Morant, man, how much would that unlock of the Memphis Grizzlies? Because they're also very deep and they're also very talented on the defensive end. What we're seeing with Oklahoma City and SGA is like the best version of what the Grizzlies could ever happen to be or hope to be, right? They take care of the ball. He takes care of the ball. And I don't ever see SGA in games, even when they trail, right? There was a series there around the NBA Cup where they trail and then they just come back. He doesn't get flustered. They don't get, the moment is never too big for him or for them. And I think that is such a hallmark of a team that is an obvious championship contender.
I think what's going to be really interesting. So we know the Thunder, barring some disaster, are going to be they're going to be the 1 seed in the Western Conference. They're going to be maybe the best record in the NBA. They may win 70 games. They're certainly going to flirt with it, right? And sort of that'll be a conversation. They're going to get plenty of shine and attention. He's going to be in the SGA is going to be the leader of the clubhouse. What if Denver makes a run? Because we've seen veteran teams in the past with best players on the face of the earth. We've seen this from LeBron before. We've seen this from a lot of teams.
Could happen.
They kind of lackadaisical and they're a little insouciant, and then all of a sudden it's, I don't know, February, and they go on. If Denver finishes second in the Western Conference, if Houston comes back a little bit to earth, if Denver goes on a run, if Joker continues to, or maybe even enhances the ridiculous numbers he's putting up, there is going to be a push for him again, John, because when you just look at him on paper, when you look at his numbers, it slaps you in the face.
Yeah, the team around. Well, that has been my whole position, that his numbers are his individual numbers are so undeniable. And then, as I mentioned to you, I think, like, for people who didn't hear me say this earlier in the week, I'm going to repeat it. Russell Westbrook is a useful piece. That is a magic trick. Nikola Jokic figured out how to unlock Russell Westbrook and make him part of the team and improve him and be like, okay, not only are you going to be a starter, but you're going to be such a valuable starter that you're going to help us elevate our game and be like really solidly the 4th team in the Western Conference, where at both of his stops in LA, he just didn't want to do any of that because he was convinced that Russell Westbrook was still an MVP caliber candidate. I think that SGA pretty clearly has an significantly better team around him, right?
Oh yeah, he does. But they're young. I mean, no, they do, and that is clearly true. But when you sort of factor in the youth, like how young they are, it negates a little bit that argument for me. But they are more talented. Also, he lost his second best player. I mean, we don't think of that very often because it hasn't had an impact. But maybe that's because he's so valuable. We haven't even noticed that Chet's just chilling. Still hurts.
Just imagine when those two guys, both bigs, are back. And Chet was getting up shots, by the way, when they were in Philadelphia the other day. So who knows? He could be back sooner rather than later. But when you have one and or both, when you have one of those guys, they're incredible. When you have both of those guys, we haven't seen it yet, but I imagine they'll be incredible because Dagnall can do so many different things with them. Put them side by side. You can stagger them. You could, match up dependent based on what the other team is doing, or you're trying to force the other team into doing. I can't wait to see that. They just have so many weapons.
I have a heat check question for you, just based on like how this game impacts how we view things, or maybe how we know things. 2 questions. First one, if you had to take it today, Thunder or the Field out of the West?
God, I'm usually a Field guy. I'm usually a Field guy, but I'm going Thunder.
Cavs or Field?
Field.
I think so too. By the way, we mentioned Boston. I don't think the Knicks are making the NBA Finals, but they can, and they can certainly take down somebody that maybe they shouldn't. I mean, that's a really good team.
And this just, I guess, reinforces what you were saying earlier, that if you're one of these teams, and you're Oklahoma City, you'd rather be in the West because, I mean, the gap between 1 and everybody, 2 through 8, really mix them up, figure it out. All of a sudden, like, you really pick up anybody, and I'd say, I'd rather take Oklahoma City. That's how good they've been. Comfortably take. I mean, of course, with the obvious caveat that SGA has to remain healthy, because I think they can sustain losses to other key cogs. I mean, we're seeing it right now. Without Chet Holmgren, any other team would probably be sunk. With SGA on the floor, though, you're okay. You're going to be fine.
You're for every team. Any team's best player or MVP level player, right? Yeah. Like if Joker goes down, the Nuggets are finished. If Wemby goes down, the Spurs aren't making the play, right? Like, down the Cat's interesting. If Cat went down, I'm not that. By the way, this is an argument. This is not the podcast we're having. If Cat went down, I still would bet on the Knicks to be the 3 or 4 seed, could be 3 or 4 in the East.
I don't know that I would. He's been so good. Yeah, he's been so good for them, and he's so valuable. And taking him out of that offense, I think that would slow them down a little bit. I want to discuss the All-Star voting thing because we got the third fan returns here, and it's striking to me where
my ballot's due. By the way, so help me. My ballot is due. I'm going to write this down. So I hate this stuff.
Oklahoma City has 2 guys in the top 10. Obviously, SGA number 1 with a bullet for the Western Conference backcourt.
Yep.
Front court, Jalen Williams starter, Jalen Williams, J-Dub, not J-Will. Although J-Will started tonight because they didn't have Isaiah Hartenstein, but you know who I'm talking about. He was 7th in the front court. Bill, isn't it kind of crazy? I know Chet would have been in there, but isn't it kind of crazy that this team has just 2 guys who are under consideration? I hope Jalen Williams makes it, by the way. He's deserving.
I do too. And by the way, Oklahoma City is a very small market for the NBA. And we're talking about fan voting. I mean, that's pretty cool.
It is.
If you play for the Knicks or you're LeBron, right, or you're whatever, like this is the Thunder getting some recognition for their 3rd best guy. That's pretty kind of credit to the voters.
They should. If Chet Holmgren had played, I'm convinced that he would have been there too. So they should get 3 guys then. But in this instance, 2 guys, I would say. Now for the Cavs, this is where it gets interesting. Front court for the Cavs in the Eastern Conference, Evan Mobley is 6th in the fan voting. Jared Allen is 10th. My guess is Jared Allen's not going to make it, but who knows what happens when the players vote and then also the coaches vote. Backcourt, this is where I get angry because LaMelo Ball leads the fan voting in the Eastern Conference. Yeah. I'm not going to do another rant. I already did it. Everybody can go and check it out if they want. Donovan Mitchell is 2nd. He's going to make it. Darius Garland comes in at 8th. He should make it. There's like 12 guards in the Eastern Conference who are more worthy. I'm being hyperbolic, but there are at least 8 guards who are. Well, I guess it would be 7 with LaMelo. So if LaMelo comes in 1, then there are 6 or 7 guys behind him who are more valuable.
He's a baller. He's an entertainer.
He's entertaining.
It's not all winner. It's all star. How bright do you shine, John?
Right. It's not all effective. It's not all important. All winner.
Right. It's not all. I want you on my basketball team. It's I want to watch you do your thing.
How many Cavs should make it, and how many do you think will make it?
I think that 3 Cavs should make it, and I think that 2 Cavs. Well,
I think 3 should maybe 3 will.
Yeah, Mobley, Mitchell.
I think the 2 guards and Mobley.
Yeah, there's a case for Jared Allen. I mean, they're the best record in the NBA, right? I mean, like there's a case for, but he's not going to make it.
Aaron's saying that the front court in the East is thin, and that's why he thinks that Jared Allen will make it. So let me run past the front court here for you. Court
Giannis.
In the East. You got Giannis, Tatum, Cat, Paolo, Jaylen Brown. It's not that thin. Evan Mobley. When you get to Evan Mobley, that's where you start to have some. Because Jimmy Butler, I don't think he's going to make it. Yeah, but he's not going to make the team. Franz Wagner could have made it, won't make. Yeah, he might make it. How many are you taking though? He might make it. He has a shot. He has a non-zero chance. Paolo has only played 10 games. That's an excellent point. So
I don't think that matters though. If the fan,
well, but the players and the coaches won't vote for him.
Right. And the media. Yeah.
Right.
But isn't
it? Media, that's what I meant. Players.
It's weighted pretty heavily toward the fans.
It's 50% fans and then 25% players and 25% media. So, and then, So then, I think it's 3. Jared Allen is the guy I think that is going to have a harder one to make a case for it.
Here's my unpopular All-Star opinion. I'm someone who hates the All-Star game and is thrilled that I'm covering it, but not staying for the game. So I probably great they gave me a vote. I really hope they're watching. It's not the same thing as All NBA. It is a showcase event that is, I mean, you should be really good, but I think star power, a little pizzazz. I think previous
You're the
history.
guy who's been voting for LaMelo. You're just sitting at home voting for LaMelo over and over again.
I mean, what do you mean? I'm doing it right now on my other computer. Have you seen my arm over here? Just LaMelo 1,000 times.
Voting over and over for LaMelo Ball. It's interesting though, because these two teams are so deserving, and it's just funny to, well, not even funny, but it's interesting to look at their teams and go, okay, yeah, Oklahoma City's probably definitely going to get one guy, should get two, but might not. And if he didn't, like, it wouldn't be that surprising.
Right.
So
they'll get the guy. That might be it.
We'll keep an eye on that too. We also mentioned earlier in the week when we did our midseason award show, Evan Mobley at plus 450 to win most improved player of the year. You know, again, not a great game. We can put this game aside. I just think he's been so good this season.
Now, this is just my pet peeve. Your pet peeve is LaMelo. Mine is most improved player for like guys that were already awesome.
You hate it. You hate it.
It's such a dumb way we do this award.
He was good, and now I think he's like,
he is sensational this year.
NBA conversation, right? If
you're all NBA top 3 defensive player of the year. Yes.
That's an unbelievable season. And so at the very least, give this guy an all-star nod. That would be really good. Any other takeaways for you from tonight?
No, I mean, other than other than it was disappointing. Like I got myself really excited about another barn burner, and the game was over like 20 seconds into the game. So no, that's my downer takeaway at the end of the pod.
This is the last thing I'll bring up because we discussed it on HQ tonight. Hakeem asked us what they should do with the trade deadline. And both of us, dressed in our similar outfits like we were college professors about to lead a lecture or perhaps a poetry reading afterwards, said that probably nothing. Like if the Cavs do anything, it's probably going to be a marginal move. And then with Oklahoma City, I think if they do anything, what we're likely to see from them is what we saw from them last year. So we've discussed, and everybody knows, that Oklahoma City has just an outrageous number of draft picks, and they can't roster that many guys. So what did they do last year? They looked down at the end of the bench, and they saw Trey Mann, who's a good basketball player, but they went, hey, man, we like you, but you're not going to factor into our future plans. So what we're going to do is we're going to move you on for Gordon Hayward, who also does not factor into our plans, either present or future, but has an expiring contract, so we know we're going to free up a roster spot in the offseason. I think that's what's going to happen this season for Oklahoma City. They're going to look down at the bench, pick out 1 or 2 guys and be, thank you so much. We're going to find some place for you to play. We're going to take back some expiring money, and we're going to open up some roster spots for somebody that we'll draft this year.
You are right. That is so far in the weeds, and it just speaks to how ridiculously well run. No, not you. Just look what Sam Presti's done. I mean, I still, you know how you don't. All right, so you and I live in LA, and I'm from Iowa, and I went to school in Missouri. I didn't see the ocean until I was 20. First time I saw the ocean, I was a 20-year-old. And so,
you're like Keanu Reeves from Point Break. He's like, I've never seen any ocean before. I'm drawn to it.
It was so I try not to take for granted how majestic. Like and the same thing is true. Do not take for granted what the Thunder what Presti has created and how sustainable this thing is.
Yes,
because they can also just move some of those guys for picks down the road and keep recycling this until they do get into contract hell and CBA hell. That comes for everybody. Yes. Right. I mean, this is the most sustainable. They haven't won anything yet, but this is the most sustainable rising force that the NBA's ever seen, potentially, because of what the long-term planning Presti put together. And he fleeced the Clippers, and he got it. Remember, SGA, as you know, wasn't drafted by this organization. I mean, it's just, don't lose track of how remarkable that is.
The timeline on the age group that he put together, coupled with like the affordability at present, because you're right, eventually they're going to have to make some tough decisions, but it's a nice problem to have where you're going to have some of these guys like Chet who are going to get big contracts, and Jalen Williams, if he becomes an all-star and all NBA level player, where you're going to have to say to yourself, all right, we're going to have some hard decisions to make. However, because they do have that plethora of draft picks, being able to reload, they're in a much better position to do that, and over a longer period than a team like the Celtics, who are just as deep, but way more expensive, and are going to have a harder time reloading.
And also, what's really interesting about this team, too, and this is way down the road and also way in the weeds, but we've seen a bunch of teams go into the second apron and have no flexibility, right? There's no flexibility for the Suns. There's no flexibility for a lot of teams. And when things go wrong or they bring in players that don't work, they're stuck. If you're the Thunder down the road and you got to pay everybody and you have to really be just – you've got so many drafts, it's fine. You'll figure it out. Like, you don't have to go into the market ever.
All that whole we're just waiting for them to take a big swing thing. Forget about it. This is they're living their big,
also
they created it in house.
And credit Presti for that too, because all of us last year, me included, were like, well, maybe they should, maybe they should try to get, Durant available, whoever it is. Their biggest addition is going to be Chet coming back. So I mean, like, that is no other team. Here's my hot take of the day. No other team between now and the trade deadline is going to add a player that even remotely approaches the level, excellence, and impact of Chet Holmgren when he returns to the best team in the NBA.
That is an excellent, excellent point. No matter what happens at the deadline, it will not have the impact of Chet Holmgren being added to the best team in the NBA. Last question for you, and it's a good one that comes from producer Aaron. With this group, again, with the obvious caveat of injuries, over under this group for the Thunder winning 1.5 titles?
Oh, it's a great question. So that's a 10-year timeline, by the way. I mean, that's not you asking me that with whatever. The Sixers. I'm sorry, it's a joke.
That's a 20-year timeline. That's actually a much longer timeline than even that. It's not a 40-year timeline.
So my first instinct is easy over, and my second thought is Wembanyama. Well, Wemby's, and you got to go through him. I mean, like, then you got to play in the finals. I mean, you're in the same conference, and I think he's over. I'll go over
on Wemby, but Wemby and that team. Wemby is arguably in the next couple of years, maybe probably inarguably in the next couple of years, the best player that either team will have. However,
inarguably.
The number of players that Oklahoma City has and the depth, it's not like, their 6th, 7th, 8th best guys are just kind of rotation players. You ship off, the other Jalen Williams or Kenrich Williams or Alex Caruso or Isaiah Hartenstein to another team, and they're immediate impact players. And they're just like 15 minutes a game, depending on the night, rotating through Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins. Like, they're just absolutely outrageous.
I'll take the over, and I'm obviously in on the Thunder being really good for a long time, but this is the time because Wemby doesn't have the pieces around him. Durant, Steph, and LeBron, they're toast. They're done in terms of winning championships ever again. John Morant's still not like I think if Memphis ever clicks and stays healthy, maybe adds another piece. This is a really, like, the next 2-3 years, the sort of end of and then post KD, Steph, LeBron dominance era. That era is over, but they're obviously still playing. And before the Spurs, I think it's inevitable and inarguable as well, get to the point where they're just a perennial contender because they're a great organization and they put whatever they have to around Wemby. What's that? 3 years from now? A year from now, Wemby's the best player in the game, and 3 years from now, they're a contending team. I think that's the timeline.
Wemby and the Spurs are a good one. I think that I would like you to apologize to my Houston Rockets. This is Rockets erasure. I would throw them in there. They're
sure. I'm not just excluding
the Rockets. When we look at them right now, they're way ahead of schedule, obviously.
Way too far.
But they've kind of created a mini OKC situation in that they've got a ton of picks. They've got cap space. They've got a ton of flexibility.
I think they're ways off.
Well, I mean, in terms of like how young and athletic they are.
Rockets or Spurs? Who wins the ring first? I think it's Spurs. I don't think the Rockets are winning the next.
What are they going to do with those extra picks? What are they going to do with their cap space?
If they go get Kevin Durant or Booker or something,
that's what I'm saying.
I'll change my mind. Yeah, right.
Listen, once they figure out how to shoot, Bill, you can't stop the Houston Rockets.
It's all coming together.
I want to tell you a quick story real quick before we go, because you said I had gotten into the weeds. So today I went and got a haircut, and my barber was talking about the Lakers. He's a Lakers fan. And he told me in all serious, this has nothing to do with tonight's game.
No, tell me. I love this stuff. I have a story for you after this. Okay.
So I'm sitting there and when you're in the barber chair, everybody's talking smack about this, that, and the third. He's a big Lakers fan, and he's angry. And he's angry that the Lakers are giving minutes to Gabe Vincent. He can't stand it. And I'm just reading a magazine, waiting to get into the chair. And I look up, and he doesn't know what I do for a living. And I'm like, all right, fair enough. They're kind of in a tough spot there. It's a thin roster. Who would you play? And he goes, they need to play Bronny James.
Oh my God.
He's a player. He's so good. And I was like, kill me.
You let that man cut your hair? It looks good.
I have a different barber.
Good.
But he was and I was like, listen, man, I think you need to reevaluate this thing. What's your story?
So here's my very similar, and this is a little, I'm not even embarrassed by it. I don't care. I went to Vegas for the NBA Cup, and my brother was there, and he gave me a sauna day, and I went in a steam room for the first time in my life, and I've been in a steam room every day for the last 8 weeks. It's a game changer. But now the old men are starting to recognize me because it's all these old dudes, and one guy was like in the steam, like, hey, you're an NBA guy, right? I'm like, oh, yeah. He goes, are the Lakers going to win the title this year? What? You're in a steam room. You're kind of vulnerable. So instead of being honest, I was like, yeah, man, I don't think so, but they got LeBron. He goes, they got LeBron, right? I'm like, yeah, I don't think it's going to, but you think they can. I'm like, yeah, man, it's good. I felt like I lied to the guy. Hope he's watching.
When you go back in there, tell them they need to play Bronny James and that they might have a shot if they do. That's how they get there.
Sir, if you're watching, I lied to you in the steam room. You guys have zero chance. I don't think you're even going to make it to the actual playoffs. I apologize for the social lie.
Bless their hearts, Lakers fans. Always optimistic. All right, that's going to do it for us tonight. We appreciate everybody joining us for a special live post-game edition of Beyond the Arc. Bill's going to be back at it tomorrow with Brad Bodkin. Brad's always got some spicy takes. You want to make sure you check that out. They're going to be live on YouTube at 12 p.m. Eastern. You can find us on YouTube. You can find them on YouTube tomorrow at Beyond the Arc CBS. But for now, for our NBA insider, Bill Reiter, I'm John Gonzalez. We thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.